Coming up on Grady Newsource. Today is the last day for Georgia House and Senate to vote on legislation. We'll have more on what key bills could be passed by midnight tonight. Then, why fentanyl overdoses are at an all-time high in Athens. And how a local organization is fighting bullying by standing up for the silent.
This is Northeast Georgia's only local source for TV news. From the Grady College of the University of Georgia, this is Grady Newsource.
Welcome to Grady Newsource. I'm Logan Crump. We have team coverage on legislation currently moving through the Georgia General Assembly. Grady Newsource reporter Josh Talevsky will bring us the latest on key bills to keep an eye on today. But first, we will go to Grady Newsource reporter Ashley Balsavius, who joins us live to tell us about a bill that aims to protect children from firearms. This comes at a time when the nation is reeling from a deadly shooting in a Nashville school. Ashley, could you tell us more about this bill?
Yes, Logan. Firearms are now the leading cause of death in children in America. House Bill 161 hopes to change that. It would require gun owners to securely store guns in their home away from children. Now, almost 90% of unintentional shooting injuries and deaths among children under the age of 15 occur at home, and those who support this bill believe it would significantly reduce that percentage. I spoke with a mom of two. She's a volunteer with Georgia Moms Demand Action, and she's been advocating for this bill. Take a look.
My son was in preschool when Sandy Hook happened.
Like many moms, Laura Judge worries about her children's safety in an era of gun violence.
Between me and my children, we now have 2 generations dealing with, going into 3 generations dealing with school shootings. And it's just not okay.
It's not okay, she says, which is why she spends her time volunteering with Georgia Moms Demand Action and is working to convince legislators to pass House Bill 161. The bill was introduced by Representative Dr. Au.
More than half the gun deaths in children and teens in this country could be averted by the safe storage of firearms.
But that's not enough to convince those who feel their guns shouldn't be restricted.
This has nothing to do with safety. This is all about big government shoving their noses into our homes and trying to disarm us.
Others say it's unconstitutional.
I'd also point out that the bill, if passed, would violate both the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Georgia.
Judge says she's not trying to take people's guns away. She's a gun owner herself who wants people to be responsible.
I do keep my firearms secured, and I think it's a simple, easy way to say that this is a stance that we should take as responsible gun owners.
Bill didn't pass in this year's legislative session, but Judge says the bill is still technically alive and that Dr. Au is working to have it heard under the Public Health Committee instead of the Public Safety Committee and Homeland Security Committee as it was heard this year. The bill can come back in next year's legislative session starting in January, and Judge urges people to reach out to their legislators and advocate for what they believe in on this issue. Back to you, Logan.
Thank you, Ashley. With the recent tragedies already happening this year, safety in schools is a top priority here in Northeast Georgia, with many authorities emphasizing new school safety plans. Oconee County is one such area where school safety is of the utmost importance. Sheriff James Hale is working extensively to bring preventative measures and preparedness to schools in case of any emergency.
Now is more important because of the fact that it can happen. I mean, and there's no place that's safe from this. We've built a relationship between the sheriff's office and the school system to where they trust us and we trust them. And, we come in every now and then just to do demonstrations.
Sheriff Hale and his team train all levels and personnel within the school system, from students to parents to teachers. He implements various tools like Texas State's Active Shooter Alert Program to prepare everyone in schools in the case of an emergency.
Playing that what-if game creates a mental picture of how you're going to react to in a bad situation. So that's all we're doing, is just giving them the tools to hopefully make good decisions during something bad happening.
Sheriff Hale and the Oconee Department released a statement a few days ago emphasizing their dedication to school safety and zero-tolerance policy when it comes to threats, weapons, violence, and drugs. Their continued efforts will hopefully help protect against school violence here in Northeast Georgia. Today is the last day of the Georgia General Assembly's 2023 legislative sessions. Grady Newsource reporter Josh Talevsky joins us to bring us more on the top headlines from the Capitol. What can you tell us, Josh?
Thank you, Logan. It's a long day for those in the legislature. It's quite possible the sessions last until midnight as different bills are vying to go to Governor Kemp's office or desk to be signed into law. Now, bills about mental health, oversight of district attorneys, and cold case reviews are a few of the bills being discussed today. House Bill 520 has passed through the House, but is still working its way through the Senate. The bill is aiming to better address the issue of mental health in the state by providing greater mental health resources, more access to mental health programs, and increase the number of mental health care workers in the state. Local bills from Athens are also being discussed. House Bill 88, also known as the Coleman-Baker Act, would provide for a review of cold case murder files by law enforcement. It would require an immediate family member or a legal representative to submit an application after a cold case is 3 years old, was investigated in the past, and all leads were exhausted with no perpetrator identified. Now, according to Bill Crane, this bill is just one of the significant criminal justice bills authored by Houston Gaines this year.
There's now not just DNA technology, but other technology as it relates to fingerprints and as it relates to crime scenes, and a whole lot more video cameras now that are available in more recent years. So oftentimes a fresh set of eyes on a criminal justice cold case, going back and looking at things that particularly in cases of homicides, might not have been considered by the original senior officer or detective. You can't obviously go back to the crime scene, but you can look at what was gathered at the crime scene.
Now, Gaines also co-sponsored House Bill 231, which would create a statewide agency to review every case where probable cause exists for prosecuting attorneys. The agency created for this matter would be called the Prosecuting Attorneys Oversight Commission. This bill is still in the Senate, but Crane believes it would solve some key problems.
There is no entity of oversight for district attorneys. And we have had multiple instances in Georgia of misbehavior and bad conduct. COVID backed up most urban jurisdictions 2.5 to 3 years in terms of caseload. And because part of what you're constitutionally guaranteed if you're accused of a crime is the right to a speedy trial, multiple cases had to be either dismissed or settled, particularly by DAs, but in some cases by solicitors for very minor fines, infractions, slaps on the wrist, to a misdemeanor versus a felony, etc. So that's going on statewide.
These are just some of the bills being discussed with hours left in the Georgia General Assembly's final session. That's all I've got for you on Sign Die. Back to you, Logan.
The Federal Drug Administration just approved an over-the-counter version of Narcan to help prevent drug-related overdose deaths. Grady Newsource reporter Rachel Branning tells us how this could affect the Athens community.
Athens Clark County Police say the drug-related overdose deaths are at an all-time high in Athens, specifically due to fentanyl.
Last year, I think we had about 60 suspected overdose deaths, and I think we're on pace to exceed that this year. Since fentanyl has really become more prevalent, we've seen these overdoses kind of skyrocket.
But when a person is suffering from an overdose, there's something that can help: Narcan. This morning's FDA approval of an over-the-counter version of Narcan is increasing access to the life-saving drug, one that the ACCPD uses frequently.
Last year, we had 127 Narcan deployments and 60 suspected drug overdose deaths. And then as of the 29th, which is this morning, we've had 26 Narcan deployments this year and 18 suspected drug overdose deaths. So, on pace to meet or exceed numbers from last year, and last year's numbers were high.
Barnett says that increased access to this drug will save lives.
And if we didn't carry it, I think the amount of suspected overdose deaths that we worked or responded to, the deaths would actually increase. So if you increase the kind of the antidote to it, I think it'll certainly help.
Rachel Branning, Grady Newsource.
These fentanyl overdoses are extremely prevalent and can be seen locally right here in Northeast Georgia, with authorities constantly dealing with the issue. The Madison County Sheriff's Office just recently responded to a call regarding a teen unconscious from a fentanyl overdose. Epps was able to get to the scene and ultimately save the man's life using specific training taught by the Sheriff's Office.
Our officers received a call from 911 in reference to an unresponsive male who had possibly overdosed on fentanyl. Officer responded to the scene. Deputy Josh Epps, he's been with us for about a year now. He responded and found the young man unresponsive, not breathing on the floor, immediately started CPR, and within 1 to 2 minutes was able to get him back responsive and breathing.
This fentanyl overdose is only one example of the many cases around Northeast Georgia as of late, pointing to an epidemic in deadly fentanyl use.
We're no different than any other agency in this area. Everybody's dealing with the same thing right now. This stuff is deadly. Within the last year and a half, it has really increased. Heroin in the area, and in the last 6 months, fentanyl. Usually a mixture of both.
Captain Patton says the Madison County office specifically prepares their authorities for these types of situations by issuing the limited supply of Narcan they have to prevent deadly overdoses and teaching training courses. Patton says these types of calls involving unresponsive adults due to drug use are a frequent occurrence, estimating that they get around 5 to 6 of these types of calls every week. After the break, we'll see how one organization is taking a stand against bullying and suicide.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mason.
Hey, Mason.
Got a new house. It's looking pretty cool so far. I'm teaching Louise how to cook some lasagna. Thank you.
Study, please.
I think I finally found a place to make my own. A place that I call home. This place that I call home.
You're home before sunrise. On top of the house, the kids, and our future. The smell of your cooking is our alarm clock. My Shiro's day is never done. So let's start saving a little more now so we can feel prepared for retirement. A free 3-minute online chat can give us the personalized tips we need so we can live our lives to the fullest. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
In 2022, those who were cyberbullied were reported to be twice as likely to experience suicidal thoughts, according to StopBullying.gov. Grady Newsource reporter Ali Piekler will shed light on an organization standing against bullying and suicide.
Today, Kirk Smalley is offering solutions to bullying and suicide prevention, 13 years after the death of his 11-year-old son. Ty Field Smalley took his own life after 2 years of bullying. Since his death, his father has worked to keep others from suffering the same fate. Kirk Smalley began the organization Stand for the Silent in May of 2010, and since has gone to 6,012 schools, speaking to around 4 million kids through 40 states and 18 countries.
Main message to the kids that we talk to is, I am somebody. You know, we want each kid to realize that they are somebody, that they matter, that they belong, and that they're loved for exactly who they are.
According to a study by the CDC, 1 in 5 youths have seriously considered attempting suicide, 1 in 6 had made a plan to end their life by suicide, and 1 in 11 had made an attempt. Around 2014, 15-year-old Bailey Graham heard Smalley give his speech at her school. The conversation saved and changed her life forever. Even though she had a therapist and people to talk to, she felt like she was not being heard.
Straight up came to him after the session and I said, I was going to kill myself tonight. But I reached out and I told my mom, told my friends, and since then I've kind of been different about the whole mental health stuff because it's very important and it's so glossed over.
Like Smalley and Graham, Alexis Williams feels like there needs to be more communication surrounding suicide. Williams is a master's student at UGA studying clinical mental health counseling. She knows how much of an impact an organization like Stand for the Silent can have, especially with Smalley sharing a personal experience.
And so many other people may have stories that are similar. Maybe they're not similar, but they have the same message that people do struggle, and it is okay to talk about these things. And why aren't we talking about these things?
Although there is not a permanent solution to ending bullying or suicide, Smalley, Graham, and Williams all stand on a common ground, not being silent. They urge others to speak up, to stand up for themselves and others going through these struggles. To put it simply, they hope to play a small role in the solution and ultimately stand for the silent. Allie Piegler, Grady Newsource.
What a heartfelt story, Allie. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you give us just a few more details on Stand for the Silent?
So I'm glad to share a little bit more about this organization with you. One of the things that I found the most interesting about Stand for the Silent is that anyone can make a request on their website to host a presentation.
Does that mean they can come to our campus at UGA?
So pending Mr. Kirk Smiley's schedule, we can request to host a presentation here at UGA. Those presentations are typically very emotional experiences from what he said to me when we spoke, and then from what I heard from one of the people that watched his presentations. But they typically last around 90 minutes as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Allie.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's sunny and 66 degrees right here in Athens. I'll have your 5-day forecast after the break.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie. So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back. I'm Maddie McCaffrey here with your Grady Newsource weather report. Starting things off with the 5-day forecast, we've had some nice weather here in Athens today with sunny skies and a high of 66 degrees and a low of 40. And then tomorrow we're also going to have a good sunny day with 73 being the high and then 49 is our low. Looking over to Friday, we're going to see some cloudy skies with the high being 79 degrees and the low of 65. And then we've got some thunderstorms headed our way to Athens Saturday morning. They'll be making their way through, so be sure to bring your umbrella if you're going out anywhere, with a high of 78 degrees on Saturday and a low of 45. And then Sunday we'll have partly cloudy skies with a high of 71 and a low of 48. Now, warm weather in Georgia means snake season is here and among us because they tend to start coming out in the spring months. Georgia has both venomous and non-venomous snakes, and here in Athens, the only venomous snake you could come into contact with is a copperhead. Wes Garrison at the Sandy Creek Nature Center shares how you can easily identify one. Garrison
dark brown
says
markings, and the markings are always said to look like Hershey's Kisses. So little Hershey's Kisses all the way down the side on both sides. Those are copperheads.
Now, Garrison says that most snake bites happen when people try to mess with a snake or move one. So here's his advice on what to do if you come across one.
The best thing to do with any snake is just respect its space and leave it alone. Snakes don't actually chase people, contrary to popular belief. So their defense is primarily camouflage, staying in one spot, and they'll leave you alone.
And it's important to know that if you're ever bitten by a snake, especially a venomous one, get medical help immediately and do not ice the bite because that can spread venom in your system. Also, don't take any pain medication and make sure not to eat or drink anything. That's all for your Grady Newsource weather and snake report. I'll send things back over to you, Logan.
Coming up after the break, Grady Newsource reporter Destiny Johnson has an update on the latest in sports.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
You're home before sunrise. On top of the house, the kids, and our future. The smell of your cooking is our alarm clock. My Shiro's day is never done. So let's start saving a little more now so we can feel prepared for retirement. A free 3-minute online chat can give us the personalized tips we need so we can live our lives to the fullest. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight. Both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back. Because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
Welcome back. I'm Destiny Johnson here at the latest in sports. Sport fans are in luck. This week there will be plenty of events to keep you entertained. Georgia fans, run and grab your sunscreen and hats because it's outdoor season for field and track. Our Georgia Bulldog track and field team will be competing against the Texas Relays stayed through April the 1st. Starting tonight, the Georgia Bulldog baseball team will also have a jam-packed week ahead of them. They will be competing against Georgia Southern at Foley Field at 6 p.m. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Bulldogs will be taking on Vanderbilt.
Friday's softball game against Alabama State has been canceled. Don't worry, Bulldog fans, because there will be 2 softball games happening this weekend. The softball team will be competing against the Kentucky for both games. All right, Georgia tennis fans, the men and women's tennis teams will be competing Friday and Sunday for a series of matches. Friday, the men's tennis team will be competing against Kentucky, and the women will be competing against LSU. Sunday, the men's team will also be competing against Arkansas, and the women will compete against Texas A&M. To wrap up this week in sports is the Georgia Gym Dogs. They will compete in the NCAA regionals on Friday against LSU, Oregon State University, and Nebraska. Congrats to UGA softball player Jada Kearney. She was recognized as an SEC Player of the Week. This marks Kearney's 3rd time being recognized with this honor. Last week, she hit .571. 3 of her 4 hits left the yard, including 2 in the game against Mississippi State on Saturday. That's all for a week in sports today.
After the break, a Georgia Museum of Art exhibition was curated by incarcerated women.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
You know, a lot of people say, when you're going somewhere, you don't want to look back. But I beg to differ. For her to see her father celebrate his graduation, it's the best feeling in the world. I can't lie and say it was easy. But sometimes you just have to stop everything and take it in. I looked at everything in a different light. And I realized it started with me going back and getting my high school diploma.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a 4th ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
There is a road laid out for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Leading down to the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
What do you think?
I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free, take me down to the river and walk.
The Georgia Museum of Art is holding an exhibition where the curators are incarcerated women. Grady Newsource reporter Owen Bird heard from some of the women that helped make this happen.
The exhibition is called Art is a Form of Freedom, and the idea started in 2021, when UGA lecturer Caroline Young challenged her students to bring the museum experience to incarcerated women at a facility in Hartwell, Georgia.
Can we bring the museum into with women's facility, because instructors like Don Chambers here, he is our art teacher and our art history teacher, and I wanted to facilitate some type of learning in the incarcerated classroom using Georgia Museum of Art's resources.
They did this with 12 by 12 cards that had a picture of the artwork and details on the back. The women in the art class at the facility picked their favorite pieces, and those were whittled down to the 14 pieces that make up the exhibit. The prisoners also wrote prose to go along with their favorite pieces. Don Chambers, the art teacher in the prison, says the women enjoyed the color of the pieces.
And if this show wasn't called Art is a Form of Freedom, it could have been called Color is a Form of Freedom, because if you've been in a prison, beige is very strong, or any other color that's just a little bit off, and it's probably on cement, is the color palette of the prison.
The exhibit also features some artwork the incarcerated women created. One piece used plastic mirrors offered in the prison to create a unique take on a self-portrait. The exhibit will be open until July 2nd. Owen Burt, Grady Newsource.
That's all for tonight on Grady Newsource. Thank you for tuning in.
We scored? Yeah, we scored. We're going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Wait, why does my face look like that? I'm playing with these new face filters. Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine. Kevin, I need that back. No. Kevin!
All right, let's see. See if we can get V in there on ME8, Michael. There she is. Now let's see if we can hear her. Good afternoon, Professor V.
Good afternoon.
Hey, we
1,
can
2,
hear
3,
her.
4. Mic check. Mic check.
Yep, we got you.
That in a while.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So we'll let Sarah get started, and then we'll go from there.
Y'all, this was like my favorite show because technically everything almost went perfectly. We had one thing with a break not working, but that's just always going to happen, so it's fine. I'm so excited, though. But again, guys, the sooner you can get everything in, it makes life easier. We were rushing a little bit. We had some TriCaster problems. We had this problem. So, like, the sooner you get your script in, like, it makes life so much easier. Like, I couldn't make all the notes I wanted to. Thankfully, I had a fantastic tech team that really is getting to know what they're doing, so I didn't have to do my job as clearly, which is fantastic for me. But yeah, everyone did great, and I really appreciate it. So thanks, guys.
Again, the same thing that I said last two times. When you're slotted for 1:30 and you come in with a 1:40 and 1:50 and 2:12, that makes your producer work a lot harder. But other than that, good job. Flexibility in the studio. We did a lot. It was an aggressive show, so you should be proud of it. All right, Professor V.
All right. Well, I'd like to hear from Jules. I was really impressed with her from the very beginning. She had this great vision. Yeah, she had this great vision, and I even asked her if she had produced before because she nailed that top story. Actually, the two top stories that are relevant to our audience, and I was really proud of our A block, even though our whole show was, how should I say, visually challenged. And I have some ideas as to how it could have worked a little bit better. And we talked a little bit about how in the future, when you go out in the real world, because soon I'll let you fly out of my nest, and I want you to know that you can always humanize a story by planning a little bit ahead of time and finding that anecdotal experience from real life to connect people to those very important abstract issues. Because as I've talked to you in broadcast, people don't have a second chance to go over and say, okay, so let me go back and read this really slowly. That Josh, that's really interesting, all this information, but I don't quite get it, so I'm going to go and reread it so that people don't get that second chance, on broadcast. So that's why we have to use simple language, give them just very, very brief information that is sort of in bullet points. And like with Josh, I wish that I had thought and suggested it for you to have some graphics done about, you know, those bills, because you were enumerating important things, and I felt like if you showed some graphics, people could have related more to all the important things you had to say. I'm glad you had those sound bites, but I didn't realize they were not on camera, so that was a little hard to follow. Had I known that, I would have worked with you to shorten them, because Bill Crane had very interesting things to say, but I think again, I have to look at it again. But I really liked your idea. It was right on the mark. I wish that we had pre-planned a little bit better for you to be there, our reporter. You know, this is your beat from Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill, that's in Washington. Anyway, from the Georgia Capitol. But I thought that this was a good way for us to wrap up this session. And going back to our A block, I just gave this, you know, as an example of how we could have done this better. But again, the best way to do it is, like we talked in the morning, to find real people affected by those stories and wrap around the hard facts by first introducing this is the person and this is how this issue, this bill affects their lives, and then talk about the bill itself. I think Ashley came very close to that. I'm really proud of what she did to lead us with finding that mom. That was really, really heart-wrenching to watch her do all that she had done. And I really liked that. I was a little confused about why there was no background. There was some kind of white screen behind you. I don't know what was whether you guys planned that or whether you actually had a background behind you, because there was just some white, like a white screen behind you effect. So I don't know what happened there. But you came close to bringing in the human factor and humanizing that story. But Jules, I thought you tried your best with a challenging show with really important things, and I was just really proud to see how newsy our show was. And even though we could have done better, we were challenged from B-roll to humanizing stories to having more graphics, but it was still a very strong show, and I'm really proud of what we did today. But I'll hand it over to you, because this was your vision, and I just had to agree with you, and I had very few suggestions, and I think we need to hear from you, and other people who will be producing in our last weeks need to hear from you, how you prepared, how you were so on top of the biggest national story and how to localize it. Of course, you had reporters like Ashley who came with great ideas, and Josh who came with a great idea as well. There were many people's stories who fell through, and you were able to pivot and produce a very, very strong show. So it's over to you.
Thank you so much. You guys made it really, really easy on me, coming up with great stories. Like Ashley had a story that I just knew was the top story, because we're all talking about what happened in Nashville, and it's heartbreaking, and it's important that we localize it and talk about what's going on in Georgia in terms of safety and gun safety. So when I saw the pitches, we've all talked about kind of putting it in a way that it all kind of works together. And in my mind, I was thinking like almost like you're writing a story, like with the show, and how do you transition so that it makes sense from one to the other, almost like you transition in a story from graph to graph. And so that's what I did. And also it really helped to just follow national headlines, and I really spent a lot of time looking at what was going on, not only in Athens, but nationally and around the world, both last night and this morning. But Yeah, again, you guys made it so easy on me, having these amazing stories that just fell so well together, especially like the fentanyl, talking about Narcan, and then the FDA this morning coming out with approving a drug. So it just ended up working together. So I have to thank you guys so much. And then my best advice would just be to think of it as like you're writing a story, and it's really important to fit it together so that it makes sense and it's not just jumping from like something really sad to just something that doesn't make sense next to it. We had some heartbreaking things in our show, but I think it was really important to talk about those things. So I'm glad we did, and I'm really happy that y'all brought those to the table for me. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. That's how I think about it. The first rough script or draft of history. That's what we're creating with every show, in the best possible way that we can. And I really like the fact that we were so news driven today, and everybody responded. And kudos to McGregor. Kudos to all of you who McGregor was quick turn. He did two quick turns for us and was very creative in finding some archive, something in his archives, which I highly recommend to have archives, because you can always pull something that is relevant and can really add some important substance like he did to this day. With Josh, I was really impressed with how he not only localized this, but he also hyper-localized it by pointing out Houston Gaines, that he had two bills. I liked your selection of bills, which was very, very relevant. I just wanted to commend you on that as well. And with Rachel, I think your story fell through, but you were still able to bring us some important news about the fentanyl crisis, and we really needed that aspect, which kind of played well into what McGregor also provided, because you looked at it from different counties' point of view. So I thought that worked out very well as on a very serious, very, very important, timely story. With Ali, the Sojo story, I'm glad that you were able to get all these important sources that are required. However, there was, besides Zoom interviews, the people were not in the environment. We never saw the place where this organization is based, and that sort of detracted from this amazing, heart-warming story of this father, and who creates something out of his sadness and his grief and agony to help others. And I thought we could have done this story even more justice had you met with him personally in a place that matters to him, that's connected to his son, for example, to his organization. There could have been a lot we could have done with this story, but I still think it is a very important story. I'm not sure. I wanted to ask you about your ideas. You had 2 stand-ups with a whiteboard, and I thought that you were going to have a graphic with those stats, but you did something. The stats were on that whiteboard, and you were hiding it in most of your stand-up. We couldn't see the whole thing, and then you ended your package with a long stand-up at the end against that whiteboard again. Obviously, this was a workaround because you're so creative. You tried to have a workaround because you didn't have a place to go. And, this is Ali. There's never mission impossible for her. But I just wanted to ask you, what was the purpose of that whiteboard and the stand-ups?
So the first stand-up where I wrote out the statistics, that was actually something that Professor Cantrell mentioned on Monday about like a totally different story, about like, what if you draw it out? What if you write it out and you're doing it as if you're teaching? So I kind of took that,
And I was like, oh, well, I'll write it out and I'll do it as if like I'm teaching the viewer like the statistics. And then for the last stand-up, there was nowhere to go that made sense, like locally. And so I was like, I guess I could just write it on the whiteboard and stand in front of it. But looking back now, I should have just stood in front of a blank wall or not even done a stand-up at all for the last bit.
But you had no choice because you had no B-roll. So I don't see how else you could have handled it. And that was, again, you always impressed me with there's just no mission impossible for you. But yeah, you just didn't have you could have done, knowing how creative you are, had you had more time, because this, probably had other things going in your life, but your pitch, had you submitted it on time, I think we could have worked more even together to get you to have that B-roll. But yeah, I like that, but I didn't see it, but I didn't see you actually filming yourself, writing it out to where we could see, as you were speaking, writing it, and for us to actually be seeing, part of it you were hiding with your body because you were doing this by yourself. But I like the idea in general, but I didn't see you actually executing it in the way that possibly Professor Cantrell meant, that actually, as you speak it, you are writing it. I think it was written beforehand, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I videoed myself as I was writing it.
Yeah, or maybe I just couldn't see part of it, what you were writing, to look at it again. But I'm all for trying new things, and maybe, but basically, I don't see what else you could have done. Now at second thought, do you think that you could have done something differently?
No, ma'am.
Talking to the father and having him tell you, maybe, talking to him in a relevant place, and there's no headquarters, there's no place where they do the work, or he doesn't have any pictures of him where he talked about these things. Your beneficiary, if she was the beneficiary of this program, maybe she had some pictures of attending the event or talking something. I don't know, just thinking off the top of my head. But it was just a very worthy story, and I was very moved by it. But just wish that there was more time to think of B-roll and doing it in a different way. I was a little concerned about the tease, Maddie's tease. Logan didn't toss to her, and it was just like a little awkward for Maddie to pop up, and just say, "I'll be back with more of the weather." But Maddie, I think you had the best presentation in this show. You were spirited. You were interacting with the graphics. It was an excellent weather report. The snakes, even though your soundbite didn't play initially, that was just a wonderful idea and very well executed. And again, I could tell you were having fun. You enjoyed bringing this, sort of scary, yucky, funny kind of story. Important also, how do we protect ourselves? Which snakes are poisonous? I really thought this was very well done and thought and presented. So do more of that. Yeah, with Destiny also, she was varying her pitch, and her presentation was spirited. Her delivery, her writing. She has a great voice. I just want to remind you again that every word is worthy of being finished. And then you were spirited, but I could tell you were a little nervous, and at certain times you didn't complete the words. But we've talked about that, and but I see you making progress with every live. I could have suggested, I was thinking some more graphics, especially when you had that tennis racket and you had specific days of the week. Maybe there could have been graphics for each day of the week, as you were referring to them. There could have been more dynamic behind you because you were challenged with visuals. I was looking forward to the Women's History Month thing, but did that get floated because of time? Okay. But thank you. That was also, I was impressed that you came with extra ideas as usual. You always come prepared, overly prepared sometimes. Yeah. With Owen, I'm not sure what was I thought that you had an interview, but what you were using were sound bites. Was that from the UGA website, or where from the the museum? From the museum's website, is that where you got this? And did we have permission to use that on LiveAir to broadcast? I can't hear you. Can you speak up?
I went and videoed it was a curator talk and I went.
Oh, okay.
And I got permission.
So your thing, yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, do we have permission to use? I see. Yeah, I like the way we needed a package like that at the end, and I just thought this was such an interesting concept to have that kind of curation of an exhibit. So I know that 2 stories fell through, and who gave you this idea? Whose idea was that?
It was Logan gave it to me. It was on a calendar, or Women's History calendar.
Yeah, good job, Logan. Kudos to you. That was a very good idea. What happened, Cole? What happened with the animal shelter? Colin. Did I say Cole? Colin.
Yeah, you said Cole. So I had the interview lined up for 2:00, and then she needed to move it to 3:00, and then 3:00 became 4:00, and then she just finally canceled on me. So I had everything ready except the interview, and that's just frustrating as a quick turn, because I mean, it really didn't give me much of a chance to pivot, because I was expecting that to come through. There was no reason for me to believe it wasn't going to happen, and then it just didn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to say, Logan, you look beautiful in that. Pink is your color. Yeah, and kudos for finding that Georgia Museum idea. That was excellent. I wanted to suggest, just like I suggest to everybody, it's okay to keep your hands clasped, but not all the time. Maybe you were nervous. I have been there. This is not your first time anchoring, though, right? Yeah. And I used to find that I see you more animated when you're speaking without reading a prompter, when you were doing your Sojo Q&A. Do more of that, however that felt to you. You were so natural and genuine. And you were using, gesturing from time to time and moving a little bit. And I know that prompter freezes me as well. It just is not the same when you're ad-libbing. But try to do whatever you did when you were talking, ad-libbing, talking to the anchor about your Sojo story, and try to change the pitch, and maybe look down from time to time when you want to change the topic. So these are little tricks of the trade that you can use to add some variation to your delivery, because you had a lot of reading. And that is not easy on an anchor. There were a lot of VO double sots, which is not something that you usually do on live air, because it's just too much reading for the anchor to go through, and we keep tossing to sots. But this was the day we had, and people delivered, on a very challenging day with a lot of news. So I think you did a great job. These are just little things that I want to take you to the next level. And also don't forget to thank a reporter like you didn't thank Josh. Maybe you were nervous again, but he tossed back to you. And I know it happens to the best of us, but always make sure that you thank a reporter, because you're like the anchor. You're passing on the baton to people, and then you're giving them the word, and then you're taking it back. And so thank them. But that's what I wanted to say. Anybody wants to share something that they thought we did really well today, that they're really proud of, or that they learned? Nobody's proud of anything. I'm proud of all the newsiness and your creativity. You're great leaders. Nobody. Okay, guys, well then I will let you go. I'm sorry I can't join you in the newsroom. And I've missed you, and hopefully I will soon be able to join you in the newsroom. But I thought this was a very good show, and we've got a few more left, and let's keep on top of the news and do what we did today. But try to think of, let's let our goal be for Monday, if we have abstract stories, to think of ways to humanize them, like we talked this morning, and go from there. But I'm really proud of you, and it's good to be back with you. So have a good evening, and Slack me if you have any questions, and big virtual hug to all of you. Bye, guys.